The Lost Brother. The summer of 1998 held a promise that Emma and her younger brother, Jake, would carry for 10 long years. At 17 and 14, respectively, they finally returned to their grandfather's farm in rural Pennsylvania after a decade of separation due to the disappearance of their older brother, Michael. The train ride from Philadelphia was filled with nerves and excitement. Emma clutched the worn photograph of Michael that her parents kept hidden in the bedroom drawer. In it, he was napping for years, toothless smiles and mischievous looks. The same Michael who disappeared during a family brunch in the exact spot where their grandfather's farm once stood. "Do you think he's still there?" Jake whispered, his voice barely audible over the rhythmic rumble of the train. Emma didn't answer. She'd asked herself the same question thousands of times since that day. Michael simply walked into the woods and never returned. Their parents were evasive about the visit. "Your grandparents need family," her mother said, avoiding eye contact. "It's time to heal old wounds." But Emma noticed how her father's hands shook as he packed, and how her mother cried silently in the shower every morning. The farmhouse seemed smaller than Emma remembered from childhood visits. The white paint was yellowed and peeling. The wooden porch sagged under its own weight, and wild grass had taken over the lawn before it had been mowed. Grandfather William stood on the steps, his body thinner than she remembered, while Grandmother Sarah wrapped herself in layers of clothing despite the summer heat. "Emma, Jake!" Grandfather's voice cracked with emotion as they embraced. But something was wrong. His eyes, once clear blue, now held a distant, almost blank expression. Grandmother Sarah's smile seemed frozen, like a mask that might shatter if she tried to change her expression. The house smelled foul. Behind the familiar scent of old wood and herbs lurked something sweet and decaying. When Emma wrinkled her nose, Grandma Sarah laughed, a high-pitched, unnatural sound. "Just the old compost pile," she said, though there was no compost pile in sight. The rooms were exactly as furnished, but with one crucial difference. The door to the room at the end of the hall, Michael's room, was locked with a heavy chain. Through the keyhole, Emma could see that everything inside remained untouched, as if time itself had stopped the day he disappeared. "Grandma, why is Michael's room locked?" Jake asked during dinner. Grandpa William's fork tapped against his plate. "Some things are best left alone, son." But Emma saw how her grandmother's eyes kept straying to the locked door, how Grandma Sarah sometimes whispered to her when she thought no one was listening. That first night, Emma nodded at the sound of footsteps in the hallway. She pressed her ear to the door and heard someone singing, a lullaby her mother used to sing. Her heart sank as she realized it was coming from Michael's room. The next morning, Emma discovered something disturbing. In Michael's room, behind a loose floorboard, she found a collection of his drawings. But they weren't the crude sketches of a 12-year-old boy. They were detailed, almost photographic, depicting scenes of the farm that hadn't existed for years. One drawing showed the barn as it had been before the 1995 fire. Another depicted the parents' faces but distorted into expressions of terror. "Emma, look at this!" Jake called from downstairs. She found him in the kitchen, staring at the old grandfather clock that had stopped working years ago. The hands now read 3:17, the exact time Michael had disappeared, according to the police report. "We should call Mom and Dad," Jake suggested. But when they tried the landline, they heard only noises and whispers in languages they didn't recognize. Strange things began to happen with increasing frequency. Emma's clothes, carefully packed for the trip, began to change overnight. A dress that had once been too big now fit perfectly. Jake's sneakers, which he had outgrown months earlier, suddenly looked perfect again. In Michael's room, they found clothes that seemed to grow and shrink, as if they were worn regularly. A pair of jeans that had once been short now dragged on the floor. A shirt that had once been loose now fit as if it had been tailored. "We're imagining things," Emma told herself. But even she didn't believe it. The temperature in the house fluctuated wildly. One moment it was sweltering, the next freezing. And always, the feeling of being watched, especially when they passed Michael's locked room. Jake began to talk about memories that couldn't possibly be real. "Michael taught me how to fish in the creek last week," he said one afternoon, his gaze distant and unfocused. "Jake, that's impossible. Michael disappeared when we were kids." But Jake persisted, describing fishing techniques Michael had supposedly taught him, places they had supposedly visited together. The details were so vivid, so specific, that Emma began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, her younger brother was telling the truth. That night, Emma found a note hidden under the door. The handwriting was unmistakably Michael's, the same swirling handwriting as her schoolwork. "I've been waiting for you to come home. There's so much I need to show you. Meet me at the old oak tree at midnight. Don't tell them. They won't understand." Emma waited until she was sure everyone was asleep before slipping out. The farm was eerily quiet, the usual sounds of crickets and nightbirds absent. In the old oak tree, the same spot where Michael had last been seen, she found something that made her blood run cold. A swing hung from one of the lower branches, though she was sure it had never been there before. And sitting on that swing, still as a statue, was a figure that looked almost like Michael, but not quite. Taller, thinner, with proportions that seemed a little off. "Emma?" The voice was Michael's, but deeper, deeper. She took a step forward, her heart pounding. "You're back," the figure said. And now she could see that its face was wrong too, the familiar features, but rearranged, like a puzzle with pieces in the wrong places. I don't understand," Emma stammered. "You never did," the thing with Michael's face replied. "But that's okay. We have time to catch up." The next morning, Emma confronted her grandparents. "What happened to Michael?" she asked. Grandpa William's face crumpled like paper. "Oh, child, we hoped you wouldn't ask." The truth, when it arrived, was worse than anything Emma had imagined. Michael hadn't simply gotten lost in the woods. He had been transformed by something they didn't yet understand. The search teams hadn't found him because he had never truly left. He had become something that could exist in the spaces between reality and nightmare. "We thought he was gone forever," Grandma Sarah whispered. "But he was here all along, watching, waiting, learning to be more." As the days passed, Emma began to notice other inconsistencies. The photographs on the walls showed the family, but the dates were wrong. Some were from years that hadn't yet happened. Others depicted events that existed only in dreams. Jake's false memories weren't false at all. They were real, but they belonged to a different timeline, a different version of reality where Michael had never disappeared, where he had grown up alongside them. And Emma herself, she began to remember things that hadn't happened to her, but to someone who looked exactly like her. A life where she had never left that farm, where she had grown up in the shadow of something ancient and hungry. The final revelation came when Emma found her parents' hidden letters in her grandfather's office. They weren't her real parents, not her real ones. The real Emma and Jake had died in a car accident years before. What existed now were echoes, copies created by Michael's influence, given form and memory by his desperate need for family. Michael had not survived his disappearance. He had transcended it, becoming something capable of manipulating reality itself, creating copies of those he loved most. The farm, his grandparents, even his memories, all constructs designed to bring his family back. "You're not real," Emma whispered, staring at her hands, watching them flicker like a bad television signal. But even as she said it, she felt the truth. She was Michael's attempt to recreate what he had lost, a ghost-given substance through love, pain, and an unspeakable hunger. Michael appeared to them that night, no longer trying to hide what he had become. His form shifted and flowed, sometimes resembling the boy he had been, sometimes something far stranger. "I just wanted my family back," he said, and in his voice, Emma heard the echo of the 12-year-old boy who wandered into the woods and found something that changed him forever. "You can stay," he offered. "Stay with me the way we were meant to be. I can make this real, make this perfect." But Emma looked at Jake, the true echo of her brother. and saw the same understanding in his eyes. They were constructs, yes, but they were real to each other. And sometimes that was enough. "We love you, Michael," Emma said, taking Jake's hand. "But it's time to let us go." Michael's figure trembled, and for a moment Emma saw the frightened little boy who had been lost in the woods, reaching out to his family one last time. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and then he was gone, taking with him the false reality he had created. The farm began to disappear around them. The walls, the furniture, even the ground beneath their feet. But as everything dissolved, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. In the end, only darkness and the distant sound of a train whistle remained. Emma and Jake, real or imagined, held hands in the void, finally free of the love that had become a prison. Michael's voice echoed one last time. "Tell them I'm sorry. Tell them I loved them so much." And then there was only silence and the knowledge that some bonds, even those forged in love, can become chains that bind both the living and the dead. The farm still stands, they say, waiting for the next family to learn that sometimes the greatest horror isn't losing the ones you love, but finding them again when you should have let them go. For those of you who've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like it, and leave a comment. See you in the next videos. A big hug to everyone.